Hey there. Hopefully we're live. This is the Podcast Editors Mastermind, where we talk about the business side of podcasting. We're not here to talk about how to edit stuff, although that may come up tonight. We'll see. But this is the show where we talk about the business stuff. My name is Brian Ensminger. You can find me at toptieraudio.com. And on this side is...
Jennifer Longworth. And actually on my screen, I'm up and down. So who knows where we are? I'm Jennifer Longworth. You can find me at bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com.
And unable to join us tonight, we're Carrie Caulfield. You can find here at carrie.land, and Daniel Abendroth. You can find him at rothmedia.audio. Before we get started, I do want to mention that today's episode is sponsored by Riverside, which is the top platform for recording high-quality audio and video podcasts. You can check it out by visiting podcasteditorsmastermind.com/Riverside. We created a little short link there to make it a little bit easier. Or if you're listening later in the episode, you can download and listen to it through the show notes. Click that link, all that magic stuff. Make sure that you use the code YETIS at checkout to get that 15% off the cost of your membership plan. Riverside is an easy way to record high-quality audio and video and then share your files for editing, just like we do with Alejandro. And as you can see, we're using it right now, and this is what you get. This is the quality of what you get, and the episodes that you can hear later, that's the quality of the recording. Do want to mention also that there is a producer's mode so that editors like you and me can get great quality recordings for our clients, and we can actually help engineer them. That's a great win for you and your client if you've never done that before. And that's just one of the reasons that we recommend Riverside. We use it, we like it, and here we are. On top of that, do want to mention that if guests are joining and your host is concerned that maybe it's going to be too hard for them to do that, super easy. Use Chrome browser, click the link, click a couple of buttons and join right there. It's really easy. Or if they want to, they can download the app. If that sounds like something you're interested in, go to podcasteditorsmastermind.com/Riverside. Use the code YETIS to save 15% off your membership plan and get started recording high quality, professional quality audio and video. So Jennifer, tonight we're talking about how to help your hosts sound and look great, which we didn't make this because we're using Riverside, but that is kind of an interesting tie-in as I was thinking about this. So
that's funny.
Jennifer, do you ever have to help your hosts or their guests sound great, look great when they're recording stuff?
I don't do the look great part. I have Ethan on my team for that.
Nice.
But yes, I do try to help them sound great. That's part of my thing that I do as a podcast editor.
Yeah, and that's something that I do as well. And I think especially if you're onboarding a new podcaster, right? That's just part of the process. How do you choose a microphone, all of that stuff. And I think we'll kind of get into some of those things in case somebody that's watching isn't familiar. We recognize that a lot of editors are, but not everybody is. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But what's really kind of the bug in my ear, if you will, is what happens if you get a client who's an existing podcaster, or maybe they change locations or something, and all of a sudden, or maybe for the first time ever, the recording isn't great, and they can't tell that their poop stinks. Like, Jennifer, how do you handle that?
Oh, man. I asked them what microphone they're using, first of all.
Okay.
Because if it starts with the word blue, it's probably a bad choice. And, but, talk them through, what are you doing? What did you do differently? I have one client right now, and her last episode sounded like trash, and she knows it.
Okay.
So that's good. I think she was just using like earbud microphone because her regular microphone died.
Okay.
And instead of like borrowing one from me or something because she's local or going to the library, she just sounded like crap. But we, as my hairdresser once told me when I had I was blonde for a couple weeks, she said, I can't fix it, but I can help it. That's how I feel about audio sometimes. I'm sure you can't relate to that one at all.
I can. And actually, this is kind of a sore subject for me because part of the challenge for me is I pride myself in being able to turn something that's not great into something that's listenable. Now, that doesn't mean I'm trying to get my clients to make terrible recordings, But sometimes I feel like maybe I'm doing a disservice by turning something into an acceptable quality where maybe they don't realize what's being left on the table because of the recording process, the environment, how they allow their guests to connect. Guest connections especially is a big one, because I have one client who's interviewing people that are not technologically savvy very often, or they are, but in other ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I get a lot of laptop microphones in a small office and no headphones, because some of them, right. And it's just like, and it's a Zoom call. And so at some point you're just going like, we've got so many things going against us. And if we're starting with a laptop microphone in a less than ideal environment, it really doesn't matter that much if I suggest Riverside or another recording solution, because it will just be capturing a higher quality recording of bad audio.
Yeah.
And it's like there's that tension because she wants to be accommodating to her clients. And I think that's fair. I did that when I hosted the Engaging Missions show. I was very accommodating to my guests. I wanted to intentionally make it as easy as possible. I did say, yeah, if you've got a microphone, use it. If you're in the States, I'll ship you one. Like I can make that happen. Definitely wear headphones, but inevitably you end up in a situation where you have somebody who's overseas and the option that they have is sitting in a car when it's 105 degrees Fahrenheit with the air conditioner off so they can at least get something passable. And then you have to deal with that. So I think there's a little bit of both. Jennifer, like what kind of stuff do you deal with?
What kind of stuff? I don't think I've ever had someone sitting in a 105-degree car.
Well, I mean, it was Thailand. It's not my fault.
Okay. I was like, I'm not sure where this was, but my favorite right now is my show that records on Microsoft Teams.
Oh, please.
Yeah. So not only is it Teams, and it records at 16, not 44.1, not 48, 16. It's very bad. And it sounds bad. And I send it off to one of my sub-editors, and he's like, what are they doing? This sounds so bad. I'm like, it's Teams. And I've told them, hey, guys, why don't you get on something like Riverside?
Right.
And they still haven't, because they use Teams for everything. So we're just going to keep recording our podcast on Teams. And it does. And then they have guests, and then their guest comes on Teams, and their guest doesn't, like, at least the hosts have Samsung Q2Us or something, so they don't sound as bad as they potentially could, but then they'll have a guest who doesn't have a mic, and that's what I deal with weekly.
Yeah, and so, like, I get that, and on the one hand, I'm going, well, at least they're using Teams, which is going to mangle the audio for everybody consistently, right? You're not going to have a host with a local recording that sounds like they're in a recording studio, followed by a guest and two co-hosts or whatever the number is. I have no idea.
Yeah.
That where it sounds like they're underwater. And also, you know, as far as conferencing services go, Teams is pretty crap, but also it does a pretty good job with reverb and noise reduction, that kind of stuff. Even the background removal. I mean, there are artifacts. You can hear them, you can see them, but it's actually doing a pretty admirable job of doing something it wasn't intended to do. And I think that's the difference between a recording solution that's intended to do this and something that's just been hijacked. Is that the right word for it?
Maybe. Thanks, Zoom. Zoom has definitely been hijacked for podcasting.
Oh, man. Yeah. And, you know, I don't want to beat that drum too hard. We'll probably beat it in a little bit, but I also want to be really clear. Again, we're not just doing this because we're recording for Riverside and they happen to be sponsoring the show. We were going to do this anyway. Yeah. But it makes it really interesting for that. So let's move on. Right. We've beaten this horse. It's gotten violent.
Well, your point is also, you know, we're going to get bad audio from time to time. Mm-hmm. So what's your, you know, is that okay? Yeah.
So for me, if it's the host, I might give them once or twice, right? And just kind of deal with it. And if they ask a question, or if I send it back and it's obviously not the level that they're accustomed to, or maybe when I get it, I might just say, hey, this doesn't sound the same. Are you sure you want me to do this? Or are you sure you want to publish this? If it goes more than a couple times, then we'll have a conversation. And
Gotcha.
I'm like you, I kind of come at it sideways. Like, did you change your microphone? Is something on the computer not right? Like, it can't possibly be because you decided to leave it at home and record without it. You wouldn't do that,
Right.
or any of that kind of stuff, right? And I try not to be super cheeky about it. I try to be understanding and kind, because a lot of times they don't know. They don't realize that Zoom changed their input until it's too late, and maybe they don't listen back, which is something I recommend. But I
Zoom
recommend
did
a lot
that
of
to me
things.
once. I had no idea.
Oh no!
I was the guest though, so the host totally should have known.
Yeah. And we've had something like that happen on a show that I co-host called the Podcast Gauntlet. I co-host that with Mike Wilkerson. And we've been on a couple of times where he'll be like, your microphone doesn't sound right. I'm hearing a lot of the fan or something. We'll go through. Sometimes we'll spend 30 minutes troubleshooting before we go, oops, StreamYard selected the wrong input or something like that. But it's happened on both sides. Like, hey, sounds like you've got he uses earbuds to listen. Sounds like you've got your earbuds selected. And we do that. But with a guest and a host, if they're not listening for it, they're not going to hear it, especially if the host is used to recording laptop mics or those earbuds that plug in, that kind of thing. And somebody shows up on a professional mic with a good setup, they may not recognize that it's the wrong microphone because they're so used to hearing the other stuff.
Right. Okay. That might have been what happened then.
Which leads to the whole, I saw that Steve Stewart posted it today, the scratch test. If you get on before you do it, like, can you hear this? Is that the right microphone? Just making sure. Sorry, Alejandro. We'll have to leave those noises in. They were intentional. So I think if we move on, right, the next piece in my mind, like sounding and looking great, I'm going to go for audio because, one, that's my expertise. That's what I'm good at. And two, I think audio is way more important. I just do.
Yeah.
But I think, and maybe I'm wrong in this, I think that most of the time we get the order of things wrong. So if you're coaching somebody how to sound great, whether they're setting up a new one or you're trying to help them troubleshoot something, like, where do you start with having the discussion about it?
Ooh. When I first get people, I get them knowing nothing.
Perfect.
Usually. But like I had a consultation call this morning and I'm going over, the basics of starting a podcast with this girl. And then it's like, well, microphones. She's like, oh, I have a Yeti. I said, no.
Microphone shaming coming up now.
Yes, microphone shaming for sure. I'm like, I said it can be a good mic if you use it in a well-controlled space because it'll pick up everything. And she's like, yeah, that's not what I have to deal with. I'm like, okay, well, here, buy this other one, look for a dynamic mic. And I was having a conversation with someone on just Facebook Messenger about it. Hey, look for a dynamic mic or, be prepared to sound treat. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I talk about in one of the things your editor wants you to know, I think it's the talk I give. I have like 5 podcast talks I do, but one of them I talk about how people will spend $400 on the fancy Shure mic or lots of dollars on the Rodecaster Pro, but they won't treat their space.
Right.
And then it's like, well, why don't you invest some of that money in treatments like this pretty thing behind me? It looks like a painting. No, it's actually acoustic treatment from Amazon. So it's not the best, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, totally. And that's the same kind of conversation I have, right? Before I recommend gear or anything like that, the first question is, tell me about where you're going to record. Yeah. Is it going to be the same place every time? Are you going to have more than one person there? Tell me about the room. How quiet is it? Is there, if it turns out to be a dining room table in a tiled kitchen, the next question from me might be, is there another option?
Yeah.
Right? We can work with this, maybe, but it may be harder and more expensive than if there's another option. And occasionally, depending on who I'm working with, I may send them throughout the house and go, hey, go to each room and listen. What do you hear? Do you hear road noise? Do you hear the air conditioner? Do you hear the dogs? Like, which room from an ambient noise standpoint is the quietest? That's probably going to be the best recording space for you. Maybe a compromise. It may end up not being an option, but at least you start hearing that stuff as a host, right? You start stepping toward that audio expert piece. And then when we found the best place, then we start talking about how do we treat it. Now, a lot of my clients, most, if not all of my clients, have been either unable or unwilling to do a sufficient amount of acoustic treatment in their space. So in my studio or / office / used to be the spare bedroom, I have some auto mute sheets on the side walls. They're mostly out of frame, especially when it's zoomed in like this, so you can't really see them. But I have 4 of those huge sheets throughout my office. Have a little bit of a rug on the floor. It's wood, so I needed a rug. I don't have anything on the ceiling, but I'm very much considering it because it's I'm either getting some slap back from the floor to the ceiling, or I'm getting something side to side, and it's starting to annoy me. And then also those beautiful little pictures on the back wall. That's actually acoustic ceiling tile covered in old T-shirts. Mm-hmm. Not the best, but it's something. And my suggestion to them would always be, okay, can we treat the space? And if not, then we start looking, well, what's the best microphone or the best microphone type for you? And in most cases, it's going to be just what Jennifer talked about, right? The Samson Q2U, the ATR 2100. Those are both in sort of that $50 to $100-ish range. If they've got a little bit more money, I might recommend something like the Rode PodMic USB, or the Samson Q9U, or the Shure MV7.
MV7.
Yeah, the
I'm
Shure
like,
MV7.
it's this one.
And Jennifer's got one. I used to have one of those. I have a Q9U. I want to get a pod mic just to try it out, but I don't need to spend money on stuff I don't need. So
you used to be a microphone collector, though.
I did, and I've still got a few. If they're looking for, and those are all USB mics, and I'm choosing those on purpose, right? One is because they're all expandable USB mics. You can convert them to XLR if you need to.
Nice.
And the other is because for most new podcasters, I'm thinking, what's the easiest thing to work with? Plug it in, set it up, go. Might need to look into a shock mount or some other stuff. If they're having more than one person in the same space, I'm probably going to recommend a Rodecaster or a PodTrack P4 because they both capture good recordings. They both capture isolated channels per person. So they're not, none of this, it's all blended together garbage. And then I'm probably going to recommend something like the Sennheiser E835 or the SE-V7, which are both dynamic handheld microphones. They're stage microphones. They do a good job of rejecting other voices, if you will. And so those are the kinds of things I'm looking for, right? How can we control reverb and echo in the room, ambient noise, other people talking? And then we might have to have a conversation about how are you sitting? Are you both facing each other? Are you both looking at an angle and one of you is sort of behind the other person's microphone too? That kind of thing. And I'm a huge proponent of one mic per person. I recognize there are rare situations where you might need to mic everybody together, but that should never be the goal. That the goal should always be, in my mind, one mic per person and headphones if there's any kind of playback going on. In fact, I prefer headphones just because, at least for me, it keeps me on the microphone. Otherwise, I have a tendency to wander all over the place. Yeah. If I start moving and I hear it in my headphones, I've trained myself to get back on the microphone. Gotcha. And that's something that I've seen some clients do as well. What about you, Jennifer?
Yes, sounds good. But with my Mary Queen Stories podcast, we use the PodTrack P4 with 4 Samson Q2U mics.
Yeah.
Depending on how many people. Usually it's just 2 of us, but I've had up to 4 people on the show with me. But and we record in like the worst room, but it's the only room available in the church for us to record. So that's where we record. It is carpeted, but it's big and echoey. And that's where post-production comes in. So good, using good mic technique and trying to minimize, don't, and I tell them all, don't bang on the table, keep your hands to yourself, put your keys away, put your phone on the floor.
Windbreaker on.
Yeah. Yeah. All those good things, But then I have to do, but I know what to do in the background. So like a casual podcaster who's editing their own might not know what to do in post-production and would sound terrible if they recorded like I do. I wish I had a better place, but I don't.
And sometimes that's a challenge. And of course, my question to you, if you were the client, is there another place? Does it have to be at the church? Could it be recorded somewhere else?
It's a church podcast. I don't want people to come to my house.
No. I'm not saying it has to be your studio, but is there another place? And that's a question for you, right?
Yeah.
You're the one doing the post. You're the one hosting. You're the one producing. It's all your problem.
I am doing everything on this show except guesting, which I haven't done a solo one yet, but I might get stuck doing that at some point.
Yeah. So the area that I've now started dabbling in a little bit, and I'm far from an expert, but I'm trying to get better, is absolutely in the area of helping clients with video, starting first on myself, right? So
yeah,
we got here over the course of the last decade, and now I'm trying to take what little bit I've learned in 10 years and make it available for clients. Currently, I don't have any clients that are doing video shows. I have some in the past that have captured video, but it's never been, well, actually, I have one now that still captures the video. She just doesn't publish it, which of course is her call. But the thing for me that was a big learning was taking a step back and going, actually, before we start talking about cameras and all of the gadgets, I think it starts just like with audio, choosing the space and treating the space. So for me, it's all about, did you find a quiet place? Did you find a place where you can, not that's well lit, that you can control the lighting?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Because that's a really big one. In fact, this room is good at night. It's not quite as good during the day because there's a portion of the window that's still not covered. And so I lose the ability to control the level of ambient light in the room. I still have I have a 3-ish point light set up here. And I still have control of that, but what I don't have control of is how much light hits the back wall, or if a cloud comes in, I don't have control over that. So that's a big thing. But you sort of have to think, how am I going to set this up, and what's important to me? So in some cases, having control over your background may not be a big deal for a client. However, my opinion is if they're going to pay somebody to do post on their video, they probably want it to look good. And so we have, that's the conversation I'm getting ready to start having first. If they want to do videos, okay, let's talk about the space. How are you going to set it up so that it communicates consistently with your brand? I don't know, with the persona that you or your company have. I'm not saying we have to have a bunch of your logo on the back, or it has to be one of those ESPN stop and snap things that just plastered all over the place. But does it communicate something that says, I thought about this, and the pieces that are here are either in use or they matter, and I've arranged them in such a way that it's not distracting. Hopefully, as I look at mine, I hope mine isn't distracting, but that's where I start. What about you, Jennifer?
So I do have one active video client right now. I have one audio person about to go to video. And with the active video client, they'd already recorded the videos before they got to me. So there was no pre-chat. I mean, I haven't had that conversation because they've already done. And the other guy, he's like, nope, this is how I do it. I just need you to do this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, yes, sir. And so I haven't ever had anyone, because previously people would come to me and say, I want to start a video podcast. And I just tell them no. So I've grown in that area. I don't say no anymore, but I also am still an audio first person. And like you said earlier, audio is still more important than the video aspect of it in our audio editing opinions.
Yeah, I mean, skin in the game, but also, wasn't it James Cameron that said that half of the movie is the audio?
Yeah. Yeah. And his movies take away the audio. Yeah. Kind of loses something.
Wasn't trying to throw him under the bus. Just,
No, but still, it got some powerful moments thanks to music.
So, where do you go after you talk about that? Like, for me, it's lights. I think lights are more important than the camera. What do you?
I'm not a video person. I don't know.
Okay. That's always been my opinion. And I think it holds consistent with what we would expect out of audio, right? So there's that whole signal to noise ratio. You want to be close to the mic, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think for me, having the subject illuminated well is probably more important than having a high quality camera. I think you can capture a good video with good lighting and an okay camera.
Yeah.
But I think with bad lighting, even a good camera might struggle. Now, I'm not talking about a $10,000 cinema camera, right? That can probably pull a rabbit out of the hat. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
But, for sort of that consumer prosumer area, I think that lighting is way more important. For me, I've just got a pair of off-brand like GVM panel lights. They're like little circle panels on a stick that you can stick on your desk because they were on sale. And I had a couple of other lights that were much more directional. I didn't get a good wash out of those. And so I switched over to these because I wanted you see how my shadow is kind of fuzzy? That's on purpose. because I don't want to have a super bright light on myself as a subject. Now, if I actually knew what I was doing with video, I might have a better explanation. But that's kind of the approach that I've taken, having learned everything I could on YouTube and a couple of webinars or something. And then after that, for me, it's the camera. And I'm kind of conflicted on this because on a personal level, I've tried a few webcams, including a 4K webcam, and I never felt like they got me a really good picture. And I really like to play in sort of that $100 to $200 range for a camera.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm actually using my iPhone just plugged into the computer, and I feel like I get a pretty good picture out of that. But I'll also happily share that I currently have a Sony ZV-E10 in my shopping cart at Amazon, and I'm trying to talk myself off the ledge going, you don't really need it. Like, the iPhone is probably doing you okay, but there's a part of me that just keeps going, but then how will you tell a client what to do, Brian, if you don't buy this for yourself? So I'm still arguing with myself a little bit because to be completely honest, I couldn't help a client troubleshoot an SLR or a DSLR right now, or even something like that ZV-E10 from Sony. And also, I want to see for myself, what's the difference between the USB connection that's not sending it 4K versus the HDMI out going into a cam link or something like the Rode Streamer X or something, where you're capturing all of that 4K and all of its glory, which then we stream to the internet and let people listen to on earbuds. But welcome into my brain. And this is always the challenge for me because part of me wants to do that sort of the research and development thing, but also I have to stay profitable. That's kind of an important thing. Otherwise, eventually the IRS reclassifies you as a hobby and you don't get to write stuff off anymore. So it's important to be a business, not financial advice, said the guy who just said that. So Jennifer, please talk me off the ledge. Tell me what I need to do.
If you're just doing a video podcast, which, whatever, your phone is fine. Your phone is fine. And one of the things that I heard come out of podcast movement, I wasn't actually there for the talk, and I don't remember who said it, is that podcasters need to be on YouTube, but not necessarily podcasts on YouTube.
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about, and I think it's something that came up in one of our private calls as well, right? Because we currently, at least in theory, stream this live to YouTube and Facebook. Occasionally it doesn't stream properly, and so we end up with a slightly edited version of this going up to YouTube. But it's still the whole thing, and part of me is going, should it be the whole thing, or should we just be pulling a section? And I'm really kind of struggling with that, because I don't know that our show does a great job of introducing and working through a section from start to finish. I think that I didn't mean to be funny.
Sorry.
Right. I think that we do a good job of having a wonderful conversation around a topic, but maybe not staying on the topic as we just demonstrated.
Sorry. Oh.
So I guess the request from me to you, dear listener, dear viewer, would be, if you were to see a short segment of this show, what stood out to you? What would you be interested in seeing as a standalone video? Is there anything, or do you just wish we would shut up and go away?
The theory is that people would discover you on YouTube with your shorts or your shorter, and then they'd be like, wow, this is fascinating, and follow you over to your content.
And I hope that's right, because we have started pulling I think the last couple of times I've pulled a few shorts out of the Riverside recording. Riverside does have an AI tool that helps you identify those things. Since it's not a client show, I take what it gives me, and I put those out there. If it was a client show, I'd go find those sections and create the videos myself. Not because, well, partially because I feel like a jerk if I'm charging them and not really doing anything, but also partially because I think I do it better. I'm not a great video editor, but I would do some things different than just the straight thing that Riverside or StreamYard or any other tool pulled out, because you can do some creative stuff with layouts and the templates that you use for your fonts and that kind of stuff, where some of these tools, even like CapCut, you just kind of end up with what you end up with. And I like to be a little bit more hands-on and creative with that. Do you do any of that kind of stuff?
I'm lazy. I use Opus Clips.
Okay. Do your clients look great in Opus Clips? Maybe I'm wrong.
The last guy had a terrible camera angle. Nothing was going to help him look great. So I was kind of thankful for the big old captions going across the screen, because he was just... Did he not know he was on video? That's what I wanted to ask. I'm like, do you not know that this was a video podcast? But in Opus Clips, you can do different layouts, though. Kind of. I mean, as far as orientation goes, and you can change the color and change a little bit. But I also played with the Underlord in the script. They call it Underlord now, their AI tool. And I got I thought it looked nice, what it did for me. And because it found me something that Opus Clip didn't find. And I had to go digging. So that's what I used. And I liked the look of it.
Cool.
So, but I don't remember which login I used to access that. So the script is like, we don't find your project anymore. I'm like, I had 3 emails I've used. I don't know which one it was.
So was this person that you're talking about, was that a client or was that a guest on a show?
That was the guest.
Okay. So you're probably not going to have the conversation with them about the next time they're on the show.
No, and this is one of those they recorded before they hired me things. So I couldn't have said, just tell me. I mean, the host is fine. She's sitting at a desk or talking to her computer and sitting still, and this guy was like,
so she was the opposite of me, and I'm just the guy that's all over the place, and I know I'm on camera, so this is the worst.
Yeah. Well.
So the other thing that I've been thinking about, because we've been talking about troubleshooting and helping clients set themselves up, but there's another way that we could potentially help them, and that's by being there to engineer their shows.
Yeah.
It's not something that I currently do. It's something I could do, but for me, scheduling has been a challenge because I have a day job.
Yeah,
and
darn
my
day
clients
jobs.
like to sleep at night because that's when I work, I guess. I don't know.
And I've talked to, it seems like, more people lately, and I'm just finding them who do this. I met a guy at Podcast Movement, John. Shout out to John. Don't remember his last name right now. It starts with an S, but thanks for coming to our meetup, John. And he was like, well, yeah, I totally do this with all my clients. And Chris Kern, Podcast Engineering School, he does that with everyone. And I think, Jesse does that.
Jesse does. And I think John Gay did some as well, but I think he did it in person, not remote.
Okay. It just seems like, I don't know if they're just, if it's one of those, I've been thinking about it more, so I'm seeing all these people things.
Yeah, could be.
But I just, so when John and I had a one-to-one after podcast movement, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. And he said, actually, it makes post-production a lot easier because if you're there with them, then you can take notes and do markers as you go and, fix it in pre instead of fixing it in post and this and that. I'm like, okay, but I still don't really know if I want to sit there for an hour with someone while they record.
Yeah, and having not done it, I can't say for sure, but I've certainly been on some shows where I didn't talk a lot, so it's kind of felt like that sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to that whole capturing a great recording and also giving the host somebody else to lean on so that they don't have to be the heavy when it comes to, like, you didn't show up with headphones and you're using your laptop microphone. So depending on the host's desire, we either cannot proceed, like we have to reschedule because this is not what our audience expects. And we're not going to present you to our audience in a way that doesn't flatter you. Or we can do this. You're not going to sound great. Are you sure that you can't take 2 minutes to find those earbuds and plug them in? And it gives them they can relax, right, in more ways than one. One is when you show up with your editor, audio, possibly video person hat on, you can very quickly help them go, okay, we can make the best of this right now. We're not going to build your set, but can you turn your camera? Can we do something with that background? Can you slide up a little bit so we can see your face? Like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't fix everything, but I think that's a huge win. And then it also gives you the opportunity, potentially, to know that they're going to use good recording software, like a good recording solution, something like we're doing today with Riverside. I also like Boomcaster. I've seen reasonably good results come out of StreamYard, Squadcast. Don't recommend Zoom on a personal level, but like if you're there, you can help them make the most of it. You can be the one that sets it up. Most of these have the ability in some fashion for you to create a link and be there to host the thing for them.
Yeah.
Even if you're not on screen getting recorded, which is why I like Riverside's producer mode so much. You get it all set up. You don't have to worry about accidentally appearing on screen, which could be embarrassing, right? And then you're just there to help them, right? You get everything set up. You make sure it sounds good. And then you're there making markers, interrupting if necessary and saying, hey, you're off the microphone. We couldn't hear a word that you said. Can you try that? Like, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you're starting to step somewhat between that audio video engineer into maybe a producer type role. Hopefully you're getting paid for it or it wouldn't be worth doing.
Right.
But then to this guy's point, the stuff that I've been on, right? When we record this show, for me, post-production's pretty much a breeze unless we're all over the place because we capture a good recording. We all have reasonably good mic technique. And so it's really just a matter of balancing and editing. And we've gotten better about the so that's easier. And we'd have to ask Alejandra how bad it really is because I only edited a couple episodes this year, but it was pretty easy for me. So I was happy with it.
It was a lot better than the first ones 4 years ago.
Oh man, the first
whatever,
with us and it was
in the hallway,
rough.
that one.
Which one?
The one in the hallway at Podfest. Did you do that one?
Yeah, I did. Actually, that one turned out pretty good.
Oh, okay.
But if you're not familiar, episode 1 of this show, we all recorded using handheld microphones, sitting in a hallway at Podfest, and did it in person. First episode, you can go back and check it out and see if we've grown at all, and hopefully we have.
Hopefully we have. That was fun, though. But anyway.
And then I think the other thing, and I don't remember who said that they do this. We had somebody on, Marcus DePaula, used to send, probably still does send a microphone to guests if they don't have one. And that's another option.
I've heard of people doing that.
In his case, I think it was a Samsung Q2U or an ATR 2100, something like that. Basically, you're just looking for a mic that can be plugged in easily, just USB with a headphone jack in it. So it's really easy to set up. I've also heard of somebody that was trying out the Rode, the little NT1 type, the Rode's condenser microphone is the NT USB, I think, maybe.
I don't know that one.
Anyway, something like that. I think several companies have a small condenser microphone that you could potentially put on the desk that plug their headphones into. That way you don't have to worry about them getting it as close to them. The trade-off, of course, is you're dealing with room tone, right?
I was like, it's a condenser mic.
I tend to prefer the dynamic, but also... And truthfully, when I had guests on my show and I sent them a microphone, I sent them a $15 microphone from Amazon. It was... it wasn't a Samson. It was a CAD UF4 or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just a $15 microphone with a USB port, no headphone port, muddy as all get out, right? Super heavy in the mids and the low mids, like super muddy. But you get them on it, you capture a reasonably good recording, and then you just EQ it until it sounds right.
Yeah.
I know it sounds dumb, and that's not how you would do it in a professional recording studio, but the reality is this was still better than their laptop mic. I promise you, it was better than their laptop mic.
Yeah, certainly.
So what have we missed?
What have we missed? As far as making our clients sound good and look good, and a lot of what we've talked about is the fix it and pre.
Yes. Oh, one thing we didn't talk about is if they don't want headphones like this on camera. So you and I are both wearing over-the-ear cans, right?
Yes.
We're good with that.
Like the same ones.
Probably, Audio-Technica M30X, I think is
That's
what I have.
what I've got. M30X,
They're good. They work for their purpose, and they're pretty good at noise isolation so that I'm not getting Jennifer into my microphone and back and forth. Some people don't like having these on. Even though this is apparently the identifier of a podcast, you have over-the-ear headphones on now. It doesn't matter if it's a
Part
podcast.
of my logo.
Or any of that stuff. It's just the headphones and a microphone, of course. But that notwithstanding, if they don't want to do that, I would just recommend having them check into an inexpensive pair of in-ear monitors. I'm not talking about like earbuds where they hang down, the in-ear monitors that are supposed to go over your ear and then down your back like you would wear on stage if you're playing guitar or singing something like that. They don't have to be high quality, right? Because they're not editing. They're not trying to get the EQ right. They need to hear the guest. And I've seen a couple pair. I don't remember the brand. I think Shure has one and some others that's essentially clear. So you might get a little bit of glint off of the sides if you turn your head and there's a light that hits it. Cord goes down the back. You plug it in. It's basically off camera. You almost look like you're on TV at that point, other than that you've got a microphone in frame, because I don't think any of us are ready to try and help our client set up an over-the-head boom mic like that. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that's my take on it. So I think, if they want to do that, $40-50, which is less than these, you can get an okay pair of over-the-ear in-ear monitor or like in-ear monitors, and it can be basically invisible, and then they don't have to worry about having cameras like headphones on camera.
Good tip. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. That was free. And now I'm not sure where we should go next. So this is the part where we stare at each other awkwardly until one of us says, "Is it time for the question of the day?"
I think it is time for the question of the day.
Okay,
Powered
and I
by
should have been
AI.
thinking about this one because we actually looked it up beforehand. But Jennifer, what's the question of the day?
What's your go-to snack or drink during long editing sessions?
So mine is water. I generally keep a water bottle. If it's in the morning, I may have a coffee, but I haven't been editing in the mornings recently. I've been sleeping instead because that makes me feel good and not kill people. So I've been doing that instead.
Good plan.
But at nights when I'm editing, I'm not going to have coffee or caffeine. So it's usually water, maybe a Dr. Pepper if it's on a Saturday or something. As far as snacks, I don't snack a lot while I'm editing, mostly because I've found that people only say when when I go to take a bite so that I have to stop and go back and then try and take like you get your bowl of cereal if you're going to do cereal, because we should all spill that on our keyboards.
Yeah, of
course. You go to take a bite, you get the spoon like halfway there, and then you have to put it back, get soggy Wheaties, or you put it in your mouth, chew for 30 seconds, then go back a minute and find the spot. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm going to stop it. Jennifer?
Yeah, well, usually I'm just water, which makes me have to get up a lot of times, but I have my bourbon barrel water cup and
Nice.
Keep that filled up with water. But yesterday and then today, I know I'm going to have later nights. So I've got my Coke Zero or Diet Coke. And then my trash can has an M&M wrapper in it, because that's what I was doing yesterday during my long editing session. But I don't usually have M&Ms around. But it's more like just drinking something. It keeps me from eating. So I don't frequently snack while I'm editing, but usually water. Now, if there's a girl at church, because I work at the church too, one of my coworkers, she's like, you have a coffee addiction. I'm like, I have 4 cups a day. I don't drink any after I go home. But like, if I were sitting here on a weekend working, it'd probably be some coffee. I did have quite the collection of coffee mugs in here, like a college student or a high school kid would. I actually got them into the dishwasher this week. But.
Nice. And if you're watching or listening later, we would love to know what your snack or drink of choice is while you're editing. You can either drop it in the chat while you're listening, or send us an email to send it to info@podcasteditorsmastermind.com, because we would love to hear from you. In fact, just in general, we'd love to hear from you. We do this show because we want to connect with you, and we hope that it's valuable for you, and also a little laughs. That's supposed to be singular. A laugh every now and then is good for us. Helps us keep going. Jennifer, if somebody wants to be a guest on the show or recommend a new topic for us to consider, what would they do?
Well, they could reach out to us directly if you're friends with us on Facebook, or drop it in the Facebook group, the Podcast Editor Mastermind on Facebook, or go to podcasteditorsmastermind.com/be-a-guest.
Hopefully easy enough. And as a reminder, all the links that we talked about, to the best of our ability, will be in the show notes. So either come back and listen later so you can click through and find all of that stuff, or if you're listening on your podcast app, just tap, swipe, however you get there. Make those links happen, because we want you to have the tools to do your job. As a note, if you use Riverside, that link is an affiliate link. So if you use that, we get a little bit of compensation. We are very happy that Riverside has been sponsoring this. Make sure you use that code YETIS, YETIS, at checkout to save that 15% off of your order. And we would be very happy if you did that. That would make us feel good, and we would appreciate it, and so would they. And hopefully your clients will too, when they realize how good a recording they can have. With that, I'm going to stop blathering, and we're going to call my name Brian Ensminger. You can find me at toptieraudio.com. And on this side is...
Wherever I am. Hey-o, I'm Jennifer Longworth, bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com, or anywhere bourbon is found. Just kidding.
Almost anywhere. And unable to join us tonight, we're Daniel Abendroth. You can find him at rothmedia.audio. And Carrie Caulfield, you can find her at carrie.land. Show notes and everything at podcasteditorsmastermind.com. That's also the place to go to subscribe, to send us flowers. Just kidding. We don't take flowers. That's the place to go. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you being here. And how do we do that? There we go. End session.